Booyah, and it's time for the Game Sports Podcast. It's your host, David McCaig Jr. The Game Sports Podcast returned after a brief vacation, and I'm going to get to that right off the hop here. My apologies for having a little bit of delays in terms of episodes consistency the past couple weeks. I've been unable to record an episode due to the birth of my son, Arlo. So my wife and I have been celebrating the birth of Arlo on June the 19th and have been enjoying his new presence in our household and adjusting, as all parents can relate to that. I wanted to have Arlo when I opened up the show today looking at the camera, but with the bright lights and also with him napping right now after just feeding, doesn't really make sense to do that, but I'll make sure that I do show Arlo eventually on a soon episode. Now, with today's episode, we're going to be going with the usual newer format as we transition with our newer format with having it be a straight one segment episode, and it's going to be fully loaded this episode. But before I get into that, I want to remind you the Game Sports Podcast is powered by 91 Network and also featured on Spaces. Spaces is through Sioux Today and Village Media, and 91 Network is a YouTube channel where there's podcast streaming options, which includes the Game Sports Podcast. And just to clear up a little bit of confusion when it comes to 91N and the Game Sports Podcast, because even though it's been a couple years since 91N's existence, people want to know the difference between 91N and the Game Sports Podcast. Just to remind you, 91N is a streaming platform on YouTube, and the Game Sports Podcast is a podcast. The Game Sports Podcast is featured on there, but they are different entities. Just to remind everyone of that. So make sure you're following 91N to watch the video portions of the game. Or if you're streaming on any audio, make sure you hit like, follow, and subscribe. And especially if you're looking through TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or any social media, we appreciate all the support and interaction. On this episode, it is going to be myself, and I will be joined by Jordan Trudeau very, very shortly. And we're going to be getting into variety of topics throughout the NHL draft and also some local updates when it comes to Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. And if time allows, we're going to be diving into free agency. However, when Jordan signs off, that's where you're going to have yours truly for a good chunk of being solo till near the end of the episode, where I'll be getting into free agency a little bit more deeper, the Hall of Fame inductees, and also a little bit of a round and round with Dave segment. And then Connor Henderson is going to be joining yours truly to talk a little bit of strike zone action to wrap up the show here today. So lots to get into. Now, while we wait for Jordan Trudeau, just to talk about the new format that I've talked about, that near the fall, we're going to be looking at having this continue as a one segment episode, but have ticker at the bottom featuring each topic and having timed segments with those tickers. So obviously, it's going to be a bit more organized, which, if you know me, is sometimes a challenge. But as I say that jokingly, of course, but we want to make sure the show is more compact and also follows a more strict time limit for your enjoyment. And lastly, I want to remind you about our special edition episodes that we haven't done in almost near a calendar year, and that is on me completely. I've just been focusing with the family. I call the family the Game Sports Podcast, on sticking to news content and looking at where we can update the show accordingly. But we hope to have these special edition shows continue throughout the summer. I have talked to more than a handful of individuals that have been waiting to come on the show as we've been in touch for the past few months, but I wanted to wait till the birth of my son. I wanted to wait till we were moved into our new house, which is our new studio. A lot of things going on here with myself in particular, but with the Game Sports Podcast. So we want to make sure that we deliver the best content and the most organized. So we hope this summer, going into the fall, that we have that segment going for you as well. And I want to remind you, the full-time podcast, Daniel Scarpino and Gaetano Gallo, they do a terrific job. You can follow them on 91N as well. They're also on Sioux Sports, that you can check them out as well. This has been the introduction, and we still continue to wait for Jordan Trudeau so we can dive into the NHL draft and also with a little bit of a Greyhound update. In this segment, to be honest with you, I'm very excited to talk about the draft for sure, especially when it comes to some Sault Ste. Marie involvement into that draft. But I'm also particularly excited to when I dive into the free agency, because as of today, it's June the 25th, 2025, and we are going to be predicting that's either me and Jordan or just myself are going to be predicting where some players are going to go. And I think this offseason is going to be quite interesting for a lot of teams. And yes, the Toronto Maple Leafs are included in that. without further ado, he's here just in perfect timing. And Trudes, I think it's good that we waited for you to come on in until I was finished my intro because it was 6 minutes long. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us here on the game. It's not, we thought, Chuck-a-Puck's done. So this isn't Chuck-a-Puck right now, but it technically is. It's just top shelf Chuck-a-Puck and all the hockey content put together as to one right now, because right now, June the 25th, and as this gets uploaded by within the next 24 hours, the draft is right around the corner. Obviously, it's on Friday. Okay. And obviously, there's some Sault Ste. Marie ties in there. So we're going to be tying in some Hound discussion in there. But Trudes, my friend, thank you for taking the time. And as I said, appreciate you coming on and waiting until it's done the intro so you can talk right away.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, so I'm at a different location once again. I'm at my place of employment. So because this is in the work during the work day, like at the end, like on my break. So yeah,
It's
thanks for
not like
having
you're
me on.
working and doing this at the same time,
No,
just to
well,
clear
no,
that up.
that would be impossible in my job. So, but yeah,
100%.
thanks for having me on. Excited for this Friday, and yeah, we do have actually lots of Greyhounds news since our last segment. So it'll be nice to have a little pre-summer segment here. So
Awesome. For 100%. Speaking of employment, Dave is off from work until July 21st, but I'm
yes,
not off enjoying the sun. Okay,
no,
I'll tell you right now, there's no sunshine going on, and this is very important for me to be able to keep my brain going and talking sports, because all I've been hearing is goo and ga and wah for the last since June the 19th. Okay, in a good way. I mean that in the best of ways. Love it, love it. But obviously, Trudes, again, thank you. So let's dive into the draft. Okay, Trudes, it's exciting. Okay, and we have a friend of the show who passed on from Dustin. I know there's some ties there. Brady Martin, who has been following the show since we started Chuck-a-Puck, along with a lot of other Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds and hopefully some other OHL players too. And if you are from outside of Sault Ste. Marie, you can still chime on in, okay? And don't hesitate to chirp us if we're talking Hounds, okay? If you want to jump on in and you want to talk, go ahead. But like I said, the Brady Martin was a first round beginning of this year, and late first round, mid to late. Even some had him in the second round. This year goes on, the guy crawls in the top 15. Okay, then obviously international play gets involved. The season goes, he grows. Nice little rhyme for you. And now he has trickled not just in the top 10, but he might be hitting the top 5. Okay, and there's a lot of people that are in that top 5 for Brady Martin, which is quite impressive. But we're going to talk about Brady and the whole NHL draft, top 10 in particular. Trudes, this Friday, this draft's going to be interesting. I have a feeling, okay, and not a Leaf fan feeling. I want to elaborate on that. Nothing about the Leafs. I have just a feeling about the draft, having a few surprises in store. Now, that may be a pick, but I'm hitting towards a trade, and no, not the Islanders, nothing to do with the top 3 picks or anything like that. But I think there's going to be some movement when teams might want to move from the 11th or 12th spot of the draft to move up in the draft. I think this is going to be a very exciting draft this Friday, Trudes. What are you sensing when it comes to the NHL draft? What are you looking out for?
well, I'm looking out for that top 10 specifically. I think it's going to be an interesting top 10. I don't think that there's. I think Schaefer at 1 is well. That's been confirmed, right? Schaefer at 1, or am I
Seems
just living under a rock? It has to
honestly,
be.
it obviously has to be the best player available
Well,
you'd be
yeah.
able
I
to
mean, I
go
think
with. And people have
anytime
Visa ahead of Hagens, which I find surprising.
there's actually lots of different um opinions. I think like I've been looking past few days. I've been looking at all the different lists, like Craig Button, Bob McKenzie, Sam Cosentino. Elite Prospects has their own list. Like there's actually a lot of like flip flop, like a lot more than I think we've seen in years past, which is going to be very interesting. And I think the team picking, the draft order, and the team picking has a is going to have an effect on that as well. What does that team at that time need? Because like realistically, like from 4 to 10, or from 3 to 10, maybe even 2 to 10 is going to be like we don't know. Like you really don't know. So yeah, Schaefer at 1 is, I would assume, like anytime you have a defenseman of that caliber, that's like I think that has to be taken um into account. Like I don't think that anyone's going to pass on that. But yeah, 2 to 10 looking very, very like wide open in terms of the draft. So Friday, top 10 is going to be interesting.
I think like some people have fallen out of the top 10, Trudes, and one of those names that really stuck out to me, and people are going to say, oh, he wasn't in there, but he was. If you look back, was Logan Hinsler. That was someone that was rated 10 back earlier this season. And I can't recall what expert had that 10. It wasn't anyone on our end. But now he's someone who's going to be at the bottom. Okay, more at the bottom of the first round, like 20th to 30th. That's what I mean by the bottom of the first round, just to clear that up. So still a very good selection. And there's teams with multiple picks in the first round. The Philadelphia Flyers are one. The San Jose Sharks are another. I think this could be a very important draft. But a couple underdog names that I want to mention in this draft. One is Sasha Boumedienne. Sasha Boumedienne is playing in the USHL with Youngstown. Fan of him. He's 6'1", 175 pounds, room to grow, very agile defenseman. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, this is someone I'm keeping.
You like the big defenseman.
I do.
Like that is your thing. You zone in on that, eh? Yeah.
I do. 6'1" at that age is a good size. He's very good at two-way defenseman. I think he's going to be very strong. Now, you're going to laugh about this. Someone who plays in Edmonton, the WHL, a right-handed defenseman who is 6'4", 210 pounds, Blake Fiddler, who's able to go maybe in the mid-rounds or mid to late first round, projected right now on AHL, mynhldraft.com, has Nashville selecting him. But if I'm looking at a team that could look at having a nice big defenseman at 17, maybe the Montreal Canadiens can be looking at drafting someone like a Blake Fiddler, someone with some big size. They have Caden Goulet, you got Matheson. They got some good young forwards in there. I think they should be focusing on a little bit of that defensive prospect area. But they have back-to-back picks, 16 and 17, which, you know, Jack Nisbet might be there. You might have you might get Carter Bear might drop that far. Another name that I had down, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, but that's fine. He's another defenseman who's pretty big. Kishan Atchison from Barrie. I think I said it's okay. Awesome. Making sure I'm not butchering names. But obviously the key guy that I'm looking at that could be a steal too in this first round, naming a third player here, is Cullen Potter. He plays at Arizona State in NCAA, ready to go 20th to Columbus, according to this website I'm looking at. But anyone who plays NCAA hockey, they have a little bit of a leg up to a degree. Yeah. I think that helps, right?
100%. Like their stats won't show it. Like obviously you got to kind of like when you look at their stats probably aren't going to be there, but that's because they're already playing against like, you know, 20 plus years old that have like seasoned hockey players, yep. Right? And NCAA, like that's the number one college league in the world. So yeah, you got to look at their stats with a bit of a different point of view, and obviously they have that experience of playing with like against older competition. So yeah, that's a good point. I like Cameron Reed from the Kitchener Rangers as a bit of a steal there. He is definitely like he was a really solid player watching him like all year, and he had a big part in that comeback against Windsor and shutting down that like the high powered offense, like the Protast and the Green Tree offense. I also like that Radim Murtka from the Seattle Thunderbirds. I don't even think he was
body.
Right. I don't even think he was on a draft list to start the year, and he climbed into the top 10. So he came to the WHL and he like really showed that he's going to be a pro.
Oh,
so that's really cool. Aitchison, like really, really good defenseman. One of the best in this draft. Obviously, he's near the top. So
yeah.
And after Schaefer, you know, defensemen are kind of like they're hard to find in this draft. So you got to kind of like pick out the diamond in the rough. But a lot of forwards available. It's a heavy forward draft, and there's lots of skill.
Lots of skill. So what I want to do is, before we dive into the Hounds, because I know time is of essence. So I want to do a draft of the top 10, a prediction from 1 to 10. And I want you to go first. I will follow after you. And obviously, you can name the format how you want to. You can say the team name, then who they pick, or you can just go 1 to 10, whatever you feel like doing, Trudes. This will obviously be a clip on our socials. Spoiler. Obviously, it's probably how some of you got here on the show to listen. So I want you to, from 1 to 10, who is going 1 to 10, Trudes?
Okay, I prepared for this. kind of. But like I said, 3 to 10, even 2 to 10 is like it could be volatile. So
Yeah.
I have Schaefer at 1 going to the Islanders. I'm gonna stick with Misa at 2 going to the Sharks, even though they already have their skill with Celebrini and Smith. I don't think you can have enough skill in the NHL. And with the points that Misa's put up and what he's shown, I think he's a safe second overall choice. I really do. And if he doesn't go there, I think he's going 3 to the Blackhawks. With the third pick, the Blackhawks, I like James Haggins for them. I know he fell there. I know he fell in the draft rankings, but again, Boston College, NCAA, he's a point per game player there. So, and he really had a really good World Juniors. Like he was very noticeable in that. I think I think he's played well with Connor McDavid, Connor Bedard. There's too many Connors. I think he'd really complement Bedard well. Number 4, I have the Mammoth taking Frondell. He played in a pro league in Sweden, so again, he's got that experience already. Like he'll be a little bit easier to transition to the NHL because he's already got that experience. Number 5 is Nashville. I like Desnoyers to Nashville. They might need they need a little bit of scoring, right? So I like Desnoyers. Number 6, Philadelphia. I have Porter Martone.
Ooh,
Number 7.
He would be good in Philly.
Number 7 to Boston. I have Brady Martin. Number 8 to Seattle. Who do I have left here? I have Roger McQueen.
Nice.
To Seattle. Number 9 to Buffalo. I have Victor Eklund. And then number 10 to Anaheim, I have Jake O'Brien. So those are my 10 picks for the first round. So we'll see what we'll be able to mark me. We'll see what my score is come Friday night.
I like it.
That's what I got.
I like that. Good list.
Like I said, it could go either way. Roger McQueen could sneak back up. He's ranked at 5th with Craig Button's list. And I think he was injured this year, so he only played 17 games, but he's a high-level talent as well. Porter Martone, again, like, I don't know. He got 98 points this year, so he could jump back up there as well. Misa could fall. I could see Misa falling because they already have Celebrini and Smith, right? So they might want to go. Sharks might want to go with a little bit more of like maybe a Porter Martone or even a Haggins. But I mean, I could sit here and talk about it all day, the what ifs. But that's my list. I'm sticking with it.
I like it. You know what? Honestly, Truths, it's a list that can go anywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll rhyme off mine quick because it's it's different. I like that it's different. So 1, Schaefer. You got to choose the best player in the draft. He's the best player in the draft, no matter what the Islanders need, despite that they could use a defenseman. Schaefer 1. 2, I got Haggins going to the Sharks. I think Haggins having another center depth can never hurt San Jose. I think that's a good fit. Boston College, NCAA, ready to jump on in. Doesn't matter where he fell in some rankings. San Jose, I still think, sees him at 2. Getting picked by Bailey, by the way. WWE star Bailey is making the selections in San Jose. Fun fact. Chicago Blackhawks are going to take Porter Martone. Big power, big body next to Connor Bedard. He needs a little bit of support. My projection is that Martone goes to Chicago. Michael Misa to Utah. I think Utah can use a little bit of that touch, a little bit more offense up there. I think it'd be a good fit for that forward core. Nashville. Get your cowboy hat, Brady Martin, because you're going to be doing some tip-dot dancing in Nashville. Okay, that is where I think you're landing. I think it'd be a great fit in Nashville. He has that. I don't know. I just see Nashville in him. Okay, farm boy. Okay, I don't know. I'm sure he's got a cowboy hat. Maybe he's got one at the ready. So I say Brady Martin to Nashville. Caleb Desnoyers to Philadelphia. Big center. Sean Couturier, Caleb Denourier. I'm saying they like the big bodies in Philly. Jake O'Brien to Boston. He plays Boston style type hockey. He has that scoring touch, but he can play that two-way game. They like those centers that can score goals and play two-way a bit, have a little bit of a, he's not afraid to move around the ice. Okay,
That would be a good pick for Boston too.
Very good pick. Seattle, I think this is going to be the steal of the draft right here. Antoine Frondel to Seattle. I think this guy should be a guy who should be top 5, but he's going to fall. I just see him falling for some reason. Don't give me a reason to explain why. Just gut feeling. Buffalo Sabres were aligned to this. Victor Eklund, another person who I think when I think Buffalo, I could just see Eklund on the back. It just makes sense. The fit on that forward core. Someone who can jump into the lineup within the next year, let alone maybe next year because of his experience. And number 10, I love my big defense, and I would love if Toronto traded up to get this guy to have a nice big defenseman. But, hey, he's in 10 for a reason, and I think this would be great for Anaheim because they need defensive prospects. They have some good forwards up there. They're going to be active at free agency. Maybe they're in on the Marner sweepstakes. Radom or Turka. Okay, that is where Radom is going. That is the top 10 on my end. So you got Trude's, you got mine, two different top 10s. Pretty close.
Mirka would be my 11, I think. And that's Pittsburgh. So I mean, but like Mirka is a top 10 talent too. So like, lots of talent in this draft. It'll just be with like what team is looking to fill their needs. Like where do they need to fill a need, an immediate need. So
And I wonder if Pittsburgh moves one of their first round picks to get rid of the Erik Karlsson contract, which means they're going to trade down in the draft just to get rid of that to a team that would want a top selection, maybe to a contending team. Be very interesting. Trudes, I know we have to get you going, so I want to do our quick update from a local perspective, give a little bit of the chuck-a-puck feel here on this segment for the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. Obviously, Brady Martin is going to have his name called, and I hope it's to Nashville. I think that would just be an absolute sexy pick. And I'm not saying because Martin's, I'm just saying that would be a sexy pick for Nashville to take Brady Martin. So Nashville, if you're listening in here, get a cowboy hat ready and boots and have it say Martin on it. Okay, maybe put a Sioux Greyhound on it for us. Okay.
I even saw an article the other day that was like the case for Martin at 3. So like the door is open as early as 3 or 4, which is like, it's crazy at how much he's climbed. But I mean, and all Sioux fans can say this, or anybody that watched him consistently over the course of the last 2 years, it's not surprising. It really isn't.
It isn't.
And like you watch, and I can't wait to watch him in the fall. Like in his 18-year-old year to see the kind of stuff and the energy he brings, and it's like he's been outstanding. So quick Hound update, I guess. So there have been a couple different moving parts for the team in this early summer. So, and I've heard through the grapevine that it's a very busy summer for everybody in the OHL because of everything that's going on with NCAA commits and, the NHL draft coming up and the import draft being moved to 3 choices now. And you have 3 spots open, and Brantford just made a huge trade with Peterborough to get the second overall import selection. So they obviously have something in mind. So there's lots of stuff going on in the league, and the Greyhounds have been busy as well. They have inked Callum Croskery and Harris Pangretich. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. We'll get the proper pronunciation in the fall. Croskery, obviously a huge addition to the blue line.
Massive.
He did it in the top 4 at Chicago Steel last year. He's currently ranked at 13th for an elite prospects for the 2026 NHL draft. So that's huge. A lot of hype around him. I'm sure he won't disappoint. Looked great at development camp. I'm excited about Pangretich as well. He's 6'4", 216. So with skill. So you'll like that pick probably, maybe even more than Croskery. But he played last year in the U.S. Prep League, and like most likely he wasn't at camp last year due to just like the numbers game commitments. They already had a committed blue line, but he looked very good alongside Croskery at the development camp. So that's a huge addition to the blue line. as well as we're saying farewell to Justin Cloutier, who's going to Arizona State University. You
Good
know
career
what?
move.
Sad to see him go, of course, but huge congratulations to him. And again, just the Greyhounds are the organization. It's a success for the organization. It's bittersweet because that's the whole point
Yep.
of the CHL and the OHL is to get players to the next level,
Yep.
and they have done that. Where now he's playing NCAA hockey, he's going to school, getting education, and that's going to open multiple doors for him. So,
Yep.
and you know what, I meant to ask Chris Ski on Facebook because I need the fact check, but I want to know if there's ever been a Greyhound that's like suited up in every single game that they were eligible for. So, because I think Justin Cloutier, I'm pretty sure he played like 3 full seasons. Like, I don't think he,
Ooh,
other than exhibition games, but like playoffs included. So
we'll fact check that.
he had a
Let's
good streak going in there. So yeah, we'll fact check that. Get it. I'll get it for you next time. But yeah, no. So like I'm predicting more changes before the fall. Like a lot more, maybe 3 or 4 more moves, I would say.
I wonder
And
what they do in net is my question for the Hounds.
that's gonna
Raftis looks like a genius with this draft. Where's the
it,
Raftis hate now, people? Huh? I don't see it now. I don't see the
I
fire
mean,
Raftis. No, like no.
I
Like
mean,
good picks.
yeah, and yep, like you're looking at, okay, there's our second rounder that's committed now. Pangredich was a fourth, and they ended up with a first from that draft as well with Brady T. Smith with the Gibson trade, and they got assets for Ryder Cali. So looking good. Yep,
It's
looking good.
honestly you take risks, and risks don't always look good at first.
Yeah,
Sometimes the long game is the way to play, and trust that you know what you're getting yourself into. And if it didn't work, you swung for the fences. And here in Sault Ste. Marie, big hockey town, I certainly have my feedback about development when it comes to hockey in this town, but that's a whole other segment. I've talked about it multiple times, even before when Scott was around for that. Maybe we'll revisit that conversation one day down the road, but we don't have time for that today, obviously. And I want to get some more people on the show when it comes to that. But in Sault Ste. Marie, we pride ourselves as the Hounds. That's what we got here, right? That's our hockey team. And I know there's Thunderbirds, there's team, but when it comes to the OHL and the high level hockey, that is what we have. So take a swing for the fences, and the fans may hate you at first. Hate, strong word, but quote unquote. But when they see the reward, you look like a genius, and Raftis is doing a very good job on what he's done with this team, and excited to see what this team can do over the next couple of years. And it'll be interesting to see after Brady gets drafted and his name called on Friday, how that changes plans too. But Trudes, any final thoughts before I let you go? We only went a couple minutes over, I guess, but we had a lot to get into. That's what happens when you take a vacation. So, any final thoughts before I let you go?
I no, I'm looking forward to the summer. And because after the summer, that brings the fall season and hockey season. So yeah, like I said, I mean, that leaves the Greyhounds with one overager as of right now. That's Marco Mignosa, and I say as of right now because he's a skilled enough player where he may ink a school deal by the fall, which would be unfortunate as well. But because unfortunate but fortunate at the same time. But like we'll see what happens. Like we'll see what other changes or what other, maybe a trade or something, or the import draft coming up too. So we'll see how the roster construction changes between
Yeah,
now and September. But it's going to be exciting for Greyhounds fans. They should have a lot to be excited about. So looking forward to it.
should. Enjoy the news, enjoy the relaxation, because then the stressors of the hockey season is not too far away, people. Let me tell you that. So let's enjoy the summer while it lasts here, especially in Canada, a very short period of time. So, Trudes, my friend, I'll let you sign off, and I'm going to continue chatting, much to the enjoyment of the listeners. So, thank you, my friend, for taking the time.
Thank you. All right. Until next time.
I want to go into free agency after I talk about the Stanley Cup Finals. Okay, so let me call a quick audible for that for you guys. Okay, I'm going to jump into the Stanley Cup Finals. So obviously with the Stanley Cup Finals, we had the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. Florida winning that series, okay, in 6. And highlights of that series was Florida is just too damn good. That is the highlight of that series. And some weaknesses on Edmonton that were exploited. Obviously, the absence of Zach Hyman was massive. That is a big part of I feel that could have helped maybe stretch the series to 7. And if you have that series go to 7 back to Edmonton, anything can happen, especially in oil country. Edmonton goaltending, very, very challenging. Okay, to see that. Stuart Skinner, hot and cold. Pickard was undefeated in the playoffs, but his save percentage was sub 900. You can't have that. Look at Bobrovsky's numbers in comparison to Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard. Obviously, there's a difference. Bobrovsky, it's hard to compare to Bobrovsky, one of, if not number one goalie in the world right now, but I would still pick Vasilevsky over Bobrovsky. So there are some names, Connor Hellebuck, even despite his playoff performances, there are goalies that I feel that I would still take ahead of Bobrovsky. And maybe that's crazy to say, but when you look at Florida's team, can Bobrovsky do what he does on a team that's like, let's say, I don't even want to say Toronto because obviously they're a very good hockey team and made it to the second round. But let's say the Ottawa Senators. Could Bobrovsky do what he does and still play just as good as Allmark did for the Ottawa Senators? That's the question. Okay, you have a very good defensive team in Florida that's halted by Jones, Ekblad, Forsling, just to name a couple of guys on that team. And it's a team that blocks shots, gets in lanes. Bobrovsky has weaknesses that I felt that he improved on in the playoffs, glove hand in particular, but he is shaky at times, and that inconsistencies in the game were never really highlighted. I just saw it in some of the Oilers series, and of course, when I was watching the Toronto series. But the Edmonton Oilers losing back to back Stanley Cup finals, this team of the Florida Panthers was the better team than last year's team. Okay. Lundell, Listerine, and Marchand as a third line, that is unbelievable. The depth that Florida had into this playoffs, unbelievable. Okay. Defensively, great, as I mentioned. A net, great. The Oilers missing Hyman, as I mentioned. Inconsistencies in net. McDavid was getting shut down a lot by Barkov in that line. The power play, the unstoppable power play of the Edmonton Oilers had holes in its armor because of what the Florida Panthers penalty kill was going to do. And yeah, I use an armor reference when it comes to a power play instead of the opposite way. So you can come at me for that if you want. But it's the quick analogy that I can think of in my head. The Edmonton Oilers are a team that need to focus on a couple things this summer. Goaltending is the highlight. Stuart Skinner and Pickard are not the guys. This Stanley Cup final has highlighted what the Edmonton Oilers need. They had good depth in the playoffs and scoring, so maybe their depth is not a challenge to highlight. But Darnell Nurse's contract is something that they have to find a way to get off the books. And I know that's a Sault Ste. Marie Greyhound alumni, but that is something that is holding the team back on getting some guys that can be efficient and true defensive players, like a Chris Tanev was to the Leafs, older but signed a very affordable contract. OEL with Toronto, another example used for the Leafs. Some good mid-level signings for defensemen that are true defensemen on that team. You have Bouchard who can quarterback the power play. I think the Edmonton Oilers need to focus on goaltending and moving the Darnell Nurse contract, and then using that money from the Nurse contract to bring in another asset or sign an asset that can help that defensive core be still strong, because Nurse is obviously a very strong piece. But with contracts, there comes possible issues with that, eating up contracts and so on, especially if no movements are involved. I'm not pointing at Nurse in particular, but that is one thing that we can look at highlighting. The Florida Panthers were so dominant in this final that I feel that the Florida Panthers have a chance. If they bring back these guys, we could be looking at a three-peat. And when I'm thinking of a three-peat for the Florida Panthers, it eats me up inside, not because of being a Toronto Maple Leaf fan, but an overall hockey fan. And this isn't a sign of or shed of, I'm not trying to give too much shed of hate here, but my wife went to go watch a Florida Panthers Carolina Hurricanes game multiple years ago now, okay? But they were ascending in the right direction that time. And they actually had to send people down from the upper levels down. My wife and her sister were sitting in the 100 levels, and they were letting people come down from the higher levels down because it was so empty. The Florida Panthers have had more sales, more popularity, and more attendance. And that's because they have been winning games and because they have the team that they have. But in that insane, this is still not a hockey market to me. It's doing well now, but I'll be curious to when the days that the Florida Panthers re-enter the dark days that they had for over 15 years, that if they can keep that sustainability when it comes to fans. They won't. But the problem is they may not ever hit the dark days again. And the reason why that is because of the taxes. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. And I'll segue that into free agency. I want to just a quick final recap again about the finals. Edmonton Oilers. I was really hoping you were going to win. My prediction was obviously the Panthers. Heart was Edmonton. Breaks my heart, speaking of that, to see McDavid and Draisaitl brokenhearted. And people talking about McDavid needing to win or he's going to walk. Look, here's how confident I am that the Edmonton Oilers are probably going to retain McDavid, or are going to retain McDavid is what I mean, sorry. If he leaves Edmonton, he's going to Toronto. I want to sound like a crazed Leaf fan. That's why I'm saying it. Edmonton and McDavid, I don't see McDavid walking. But it's interesting his comments when he says he wants to be somewhere to win, but he's made the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years in a row. So if I'm Stan Bowman and the Edmonton Oilers, you do what you need to do to solidify that goaltending, shed some bad contract or contracts, however way you want to look at it, and look at shaping up the players around him with affordable contracts and adding that depth or keeping that current depth, but shoring up goaltending, but also maintain a strong defensive core. And you watch what the Oilers can do next year. There could be a third straight Cup Finals for the Edmonton Oilers with a potential of a different outcome. But this Stanley Cup Finals to me overall was, I'm sorry, a 5 out of 10. Wasn't a fan of the Stanley Cup Final. I watched it, was happy to see the Edmonton Oilers there. I loved all the action, the penalties, a little bit too much at times. There was a lot of hitting, a lot of chirping. It was the nastiest in terms of trash talk in the Stanley Cup Final that people have heard in history. It sounds like based on some media experts that have said that. But I wasn't as hooked maybe as I was last year on it. I felt the battle back from the Oilers after being down 3-0, and just it was just a more entertaining final, to be honest with you. I felt that the Florida Panthers were just a little too dominant. The games weren't as exciting as last year. I would give last year like an 8 out of 10, despite even Toronto losing in the first round last year. I give last year an 8, maybe just over a 7. This year, obsessed hockey fan telling you Stanley Cup Finals is a 5 out of 10 to me. Oiler fans, don't come at me for that. It's nothing really against what you guys did. I felt that you guys laid it on the line, but Florida was just too dominant, and it wasn't a series that had me as hooked as I expected to be. Saying that flat out. Florida was better this year than last year. Telling you about that flat out. The overall score of the playoffs, though, I will give that a 7.5 out of 10. I liked the first round. I liked the second round. Heck, I even liked the third round when it came to Edmonton and Dallas. I thought that was pretty good. But that's where it started to drift off, was the third round to the finals to me. The second round, the storylines in there with Winnipeg, the battle that Scheifele had to show going into Dallas to try to battle back for Winnipeg. Toronto, strong start against Florida, very impressive. I thought this was going to be their year as a Leaf fan, had my heart broken. Obviously, I wasn't watching the Metropolitan side. That's always a boring playoff matchup, it seems. But the Edmonton Oilers and that first round matchup with LA, very exciting there as well. I think the playoffs up to the second round had me hooked. It had me in the 8, 8.5, even the 9. And then obviously I did keep watching. But as I went into the third and round in the Stanley Cup final, the interest was still there, but the entertainment, I didn't feel that as I did in the first couple rounds. But good on the Oilers make it as far as it did. Too bad they didn't get the outcome that they wanted, but it's as expected given this team that the Florida Panthers has. It was a very, very good hockey team and very well coached as well. Friend of the show, Paul Maurice, Sault Ste. Marie native, doing his job. This is a type of team that he can coach very well. It's like a Winnipeg Jet team on steroids. It has a bit more depth. They follow a different system, and they're very tenacious. Winnipeg can play this type of style as well, which makes me very excited for what Winnipeg can do if they can take that next step going next year. But this team that Florida had, very, very impressive. And adding Brad Marchand was the piece that put them over the top again to be able to repeat. So 5.5, 5 out of 10 Stanley Cup final score for me. Sorry, 7.5, even an 8 for the overall playoffs. Florida Panthers Stanley Cup champion. Stan Bennett MVP. First time that we had 3 Canadians. Shay, Freddie Freeman, And obviously Sam Bennett winning the MVP, very great to see for Canada. Oh, Canada, that's what I'll say to that. It's terrific that the Canada sports is just looking great in all sports throughout the world, in particular, because soccer is looking real good for the males as well. Some stars there, but when it and Canadians in the National Football League, Jabba Hubbard, just to name one. But in the NHL, Sam Bennett winning the Conn Smythe. To be honest, I thought Sergei Bobrovsky should have got that this year, but I am happy it is Sam Bennett and a Canadian that got it. And the way Bennett played in this playoffs, he was a pivoting point. He was the tipping point in a lot of series. He was known on the ice. He scored big goals. He was effective. Very well deserving to Sam Bennett. So free agency we're going to transition to now. And I think this is a good time to when I can talk about the state taxes. Look, Gary Bettman says that he doesn't think that state taxes, he said this earlier this year on the Hockey Night in Canada panel, mentioning how he doesn't think state taxes is an issue. Look, in today's society, as much as players maybe grew up watching as a Rangers fan, a Leafs fan, a Canadians fan, and playing in a big hockey market, as much as that was enjoyed someone was a youth, you know what? Some people want to look at that life balance outside of hockey too. Maybe they like to golf. Maybe they like hot weather. Maybe they don't want to be in the cold all year. Maybe they have a spouse who is a fan of the hot weather, or a family that wants to be in the hotter weather opposed to staying in Canada. State taxes are going to be a challenge when it comes to signing players. We're looking and seeing it in Florida. They're likely going to be re-signing a couple big names because they don't have the taxes involved, and because they're a good hockey team as well. But Florida, you got Tampa, Dallas being able to re-sign Matt Duchene for a cheap contract. That affects the Toronto Maple Leafs because is Duchene, should he be making more than Tavares or the same or less? Obviously, if Heinz with looking at 10 years ago, you'd say, oh, Tavares by a landslide. But now as their age are closer, they had the same kind of output in the season. Duchene had more points by a slight margin. How can Tavares justify that he makes more than Matt Duchene? Despite age, despite where he went, despite his effect on the team, does not matter. Is he truly a $7 million, $6 million player, or should he be re-signed for 4.5? Well, people would say 4.5 to 5, but with John Tavares signing in Toronto, that would affect him because taxes. If he goes to Florida, goes to Tampa, he goes to LA, he goes to San Jose, he goes to obviously if he looks at going anywhere, Dallas, he goes somewhere else with the state taxes, he can make more money. So is Tavares going to be looking at trying to win, or is he going to be looking at trying to secure the bag for his future? And if I'm Tavares, you grew up a Leaf fan, you made a big decision coming here, take a cheaper contract. But I'm not getting into that in particular. I'm talking state taxes. They play a big factor when it comes to signings. And it's really unfortunate that there can't be an incorporated league understanding of equal tax when it comes to joining a hockey team. It depends where you're employed, right? There's a lot of laws involved in that. So I'm not even going to say that is or fight that should be a thing, but I'm hoping it or wishing that it was a thing because it would definitely make it a bit more even. But then these other markets like Florida, Tampa would not win when it comes to Toronto, New York, and these other teams because they would maybe be more inclined to go somewhere that's a more of a hockey market unless someone wants to be in the hot weather. So it's a lot different than it used to be in the 80s, 90s, thousands, where all these big spenders were the Rangers, the Leafs, the Red Wings, these Boston Bruins. These players are looking at making money, making the bag, and hopefully winning a cup, but really focusing on their own well-being as much as they won't admit it. Okay, so as I get into free agency here, taxes are going to be playing a big thing, and I'm very curious to see about some teams that don't have as much taxes as some other areas in Ontario, California, Florida, when it comes to playing in Massachusetts, when it comes to playing in Ontario, Alberta, obviously Canada, pretty even throughout the board, as we know. But it's going to be very interesting to see how the layout of that is, as well as trying to be a contending team. And Florida teams, Tampa and Florida, are contending teams. So yes, Bettman, state taxes do have a play in that. But free agency, I'm going to get into this right off the hop. Prediction of where I think people are going to go. And I had a list wrote down to name off some guys that I think are going to be going to different places. And I'm going to keep it short and sweet with this because we're going to have a full free agency reaction next week when Brendan and hopefully Alex are able to join us, and potentially Justin Heichel, maybe even Jordan Trudeau, might even be an action-packed show. Nonetheless, I'm going to give you some names, and I'm going to predict where they are going to be playing. I will start with the big fish, Mitch Marner. You know, when Mitch Marner got drafted to Toronto, very excited, London night, Toronto boy. I thought, you know, him and Matthews, Tavares, multiple cups by this point, didn't happen. Regular season success, no playoff success, but when Matthews wasn't in the lineup, Marner was able to really step up. Very curious to see about where he could go. And as the year went on, if I saw that maybe Mitch Marner was going to move on, I thought San Jose would be a really big contender, but I don't know if San Jose is going to want to spend that much money, especially with having to spend on Celebrini, a Smith, you know, the direction of the team being a little bit different, but I still think that they're going to be in the hunt. Anaheim clearing cap space, very interesting, okay? But I think the team that is going to be signing Mitch Marner and giving him the bag, and despite people thinking a long-term deal, I think it's going to be a short-term deal, about the $13 million range, is the Vegas Golden Knights on a 3-year, $13 million contract. And I'm not going to give the money for each one, but I am going to give it for Marner because I just feel like it, because I think it's going to show that he wants to go to a contending team that has a little bit of money to spend and will make moves to spend that money. Vegas will be that team that Mitch Marner goes to. And apparently, Marner and his wife have been looking at real estate down there. Notable teams beside Vegas would be San Jose and Anaheim. So as I go forward, I will not give you those notable teams, but I will just give you names and the amount. But for Marner, I want to dive into it a little bit more. Sam Bennett re-signing in Florida. He can go get the bag somewhere else, but he's going to sign in Florida and stay there. When it comes to Brad Marchand, yeah, I'm on that train, the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think Brad Marchand is going to get more security, more money in Toronto, and he's that DNA change that people, in particular Tree Living, is listing to have this change. Aaron Ekblad. I would love to see Aaron Ekblad in Toronto and Morgan Riley on the way out, but now this is getting to wishful thinking. Aaron Ekblad, it's going to be down to two teams, Detroit and Florida. As much as I thought Detroit, and if you would have asked me a couple weeks ago, I probably would have said Detroit, but I'm saying that he is going to re-sign in Florida. Nikolai Ehlers, I'm going to go different on this from a lot of other teams. I was really humming between Utah, maybe even Seattle diving into this, and maybe Winnipeg re-sign him, but I think Nikolai Ehlers goes to the Columbus Blue Jackets. A lot of opportunity for cap space. Obviously, with Johnny Gaudreau's passing, there's been a gap on the forward piece, and I think Nikolai Ehlers could be a good piece in Columbus's top six going forward. John Tavares, Toronto Maple Leafs. Ultimately, despite them being far in numbers, I think John Tavares resigns in Toronto on a maximum 3-year contract, coming into an agreement before free agency comes to its opening on July 1st. So Mitch Marner, Vegas. Sam Bennett, Florida Panthers resigning. Brad Marchand, Toronto. Aaron Ekblad, Florida. Nikolai Ehlers, the Columbus Blue Jackets. And John Tavares going back to Toronto. And a little notable for you, Brock Besser, it seems like it's all but done, but it seems like the Minnesota Wild, which I think would be a great fit for Brock Besser. So those are my predictions when it comes to free agencies. One thing that I will mention, be cautious of the money you spend and the commitment you make. That is my advice. Now, teams may not see this, and I don't expect teams to look at the Game Sports Podcast reaction with this, but be cautious of the money that you spend and the commitment you make. And I highlight that around Sam Bennett. If you are someone that can prize Sam Bennett from Florida, be very cautious of going over the $7.5, $8 million mark, especially for a guy that gets under 60 points, despite what he can do in the playoffs. The team around him has been very good and has been able to really make Sam Bennett flourish into the player that he is. I would be very cautious on giving certain players an overpayment, and that is what free agency can do at times. So again, be cautious of the money you spend and the commitment you make. And sometimes the best moves are not making moves at all, especially when it comes to free agency. Hall of Fame inductees. Quick point here that I want to dive into. Jumbo Joe, Sault Ste. Marie Greyhound alumni, and somebody that I talked to in the bathroom last year. Yes, you can listen to that episode. I went into the bathroom And yes, I had to follow Joe Thornton in there. And it wasn't because I wanted to ask him a question. I really had to go to the bathroom. I had to take a pee. And there he is in the bathroom as well. Okay. Him and I had a little conversation in the bathroom about his retirement, jersey retirement in Sault Ste. Marie. It was a great little discussion with Joe Thornton. Congratulations. Well deserved. Like, pure like this when you think Hall of Fame, Jumbo Joe is the guy that you would think of. And I would love to see Jumbo Joe get into the management side of hockey and maybe really dive into the NHL side. Hopefully he can get his cup at that point. Duncan Keith, Zdeno Chara, looked hate watching you guys, the Toronto Maple Leaf fans, but well deserving for them being in there, especially Zdeno Chara. Nothing haunts Toronto fans' dreams more than Bergeron, Marchand, and Chara. So Duncan Keith and Chara, well deserved. Alex McGillney, look, New Jersey, Buffalo, Toronto. Look, McGillney, well deserving on being the Hockey Hall of Fame. He was a spectacular player. And Jen Botterill, look, I have a very highly streamed, interactive TikTok that you can scroll down on. And I went into a lot when it came to Jen Botterill with her comments with Jamal Mayers. Okay, people were confused about that TikTok being about some of the reaction this year with comments. Look, Jen Botterill is a hockey legend. She's a female hockey legend, and I enjoy her as a sportscaster. She's knowledgeable. She is one of the most educated hockey players that I ever heard had a conversation. Okay, she graduated top of her class. She is just an impressive human being in terms of kindness as well. Really involved in the community, really passionate about the sport. Jen Botterill, well deserved. Love to see it. Brianna Decker, as well, was another one inducted into Hockey Hall of Fame. And builders Jacob Parker and Danielle Sauvageau. I likely announced that correctly. My apologies. Come at me for that if you'd like. But well deserved to all the inductees this year, of course, in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And when it comes to the accolades, it's always very impressive to see the reasons why. And when it came to looking at some of the accolades of these players, when I really look and read the builders side of things, especially with Jacob Parker, when, back in 1973 coached and he won 3 NCAA titles, some of these individuals that we didn't get to learn about, the official site of the Hockey Hall of Fame, which is hhof.com, did a terrific write-up on the inductees. Kelly Mass of the Hockey Hall of Fame did a terrific job on that. So reference to the Hockey Hall of Fame website for my reaction today on that. Now, I'm going to get to my final segment before we bring in Connor Henderson. Right on time, actually. I expected this episode to be about an hour, 10 hour and 15 minutes with a 55-minute mark here. So for the next 5 to 7 minutes, I'm going to do a round and round with Dave. Try out different little things as I talk about other sports. The Game Sports Podcast, its core sports is hockey. We talk football within the pocket. We talk baseball, obviously. Okay, we have a spin-off show when it comes to full time. So obviously, when it comes to discussion, we talk WWE, we talk all sports. But we want to make sure that as we proceed with our new format, that when we have our ticker at the bottom and the time, that we follow and organize. And obviously, this show has had an invasion of hockey for basically this full hour. Okay, but in this round and round segment, you're going to get maybe a little dash of hockey in there because there are some points, but I'm going to talk basketball. I'm going to do a little NFL. I'm just going to give a little bit of love to the other sports that I'm very much passionate about, and as we are passionate about here on the game, but just to give you a little bit more interaction opportunity. So firstly, with the first round and round segment, or round and round point that I want to bring up, my apologies, congrats to Jordan Smith, friend of the show, great hockey player, obviously had his career shortened unexpectedly, and would have been a very good NHLer, big, strong D-man. And I can tell you that from just experience playing against him in the Mayor's Men's League here in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and losing to him in the finals. Definitely very smart, very physical, very knowledgeable defenseman, very competitive. Jordan Smith, friend of the show, winning the Calder Cup with the Abbotsford and AHL as an assistant coach. This man will not be an assistant coach for long. He is going to be, despite the success in Abbotsford, he is going to be a head coach very soon if it's in the AHL. If he makes his way back to the OHL, that is still a promotion in my eyes. But I think you can see Jordan Smith that's going to be getting up in the hockey ranks and will be growing. This is someone who coached in the NOJHL, the Sioux Thunderbirds. If you don't know what the NOJHL is, give it a search. It's a Tier 2 junior hockey league underneath the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds here in Sault Ste. Marie is where the Sioux Thunderbirds reside. And Jordan Smith, given his professional experience and knowledge of the game, was able to give back to the sport in a different light as coaching, and he's done a terrific job. And now he is a Calder Cup champion. So excited for Jordan. Congratulations to you, my friend. Topic number 2 with the round and round. OKC has been crowned champs. Look, Shea is the man. Canadian. It was really sad to see Halliburton go down. He was firing missiles, draining threes. The guy was looking like he was going to be the reason why the Pacers might win Game 7. But as he went down, that's when I said, oh boy, that is the turning point of that game. And that is, look, may not sound like expert kind of feedback from a podcaster, okay, but I'm going to tell you right now, the Indiana Pacers did put up a fight despite Halliburton going down. But OKC, I still think Halliburton, even if he played that full game, was not going to defeat OKC. This team in OKC, the youngest team to win a championship since, I believe it was the Lakers, if I have my point correctly. And Shea, Dort, Canadians on this team. Love to see it. OKC's first championship. The dynasty is now going to start. This is a team, and I've said this on previous TikToks. I believe it was last year that I predicted OKC to win. They didn't win, but this is the next dynasty. I said that before, and I'm going to continue saying it again. This team was built around Shea with Holmgren, Williams, the team that they have, the commitment of this team that they have, and overall just having Shea, MVP, the best player in basketball right now, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, the OKC first title with many to come. It was a very good NBA Finals. I was thinking that maybe OKC would walk all over Indiana. Look, I was just as hooked to that NBA Finals as I was the NHL Finals. Take that as you may, and I know there's going to be a lot of hate I'm going to get for that, but that is fine. OKC and the Indiana Pacers putting on a good show for the NBA, a sport and a league that has been facing so much more of people not being involved or less entertained because of the NBA in general. Look, it was a good finals to watch, and seeing Shea win it and wearing the Canadian flag at the ceremony. Love it, Shea. Canadian pride right there. OKC champs. Aaron Rodgers going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I never really gave a full reaction to this, and I've received some texts from friends saying, what do you think of Aaron Rodgers? And with him saying it's going to be his last year, I thought this would be a good opportunity to revisit that piece of content, and I will, in less than 30 seconds, give you feedback here. From a Steeler fan, I'm excited to see what he can do in the Tomlin system. It's his last year. He wants to go out with a bang. I think he's going to come into this year, hopefully in a bit more of a clear mind and stays out of the outside of the field bullshit. And Tomlin can keep him in line. He can buy into the offense, and he can focus on going out this year in a positive way in the NFL world, because the last couple of years hasn't been to the Aaron Rodgers favor. And hopefully this year, with having a team that went to the playoffs last year, always being above 500 in an open division, I think Aaron Rodgers can bounce back and be a quarterback that can really be effective on the Steeler offense. Aaron Rodgers, good signing, and he was the only option anyway. I mean that in a good way. Aaron Rodgers is a Super Bowl winner. He's an MVP winner, and I think he's going to do well in the Tomlin offense. Last point in round and round, Don Cherry's retirement officially from media at the age of 91. The Grapevine podcast at 313 episodes. And Don Cherry is officially calling it quits when it comes to chatting, and obviously at the age 91 is still doing what he was doing. Look, his voice echoed at my household when it came to the Rock'em Sock'em, when it came to the coach's corner, and despite everything that happened with CBC and all that change they went through, Don Cherry starting his own podcast. He had a great show. He had some great guests on there, great reactions. And now he is going to be saying sayonara to the world. He is saying toodaloo to everybody. And Don Cherry's retirement is, I was hoping to have him as a guest on the show, never got the opportunity, but I can share that 2 stories with Don Cherry. Firstly, when the Memorial Gardens was the old Memorial Gardens here in town, my dad brought me to see him, and I saw him in the lobby, and he actually stopped and talked to me and my dad for 5 minutes. And I had dreams of being a hockey player, and he told me what I needed to do. Physical, he gave me the thumbs up. He had a picture with me with the thumbs up. And if I have the ability to show that picture, I'll try to show it on this episode. But nonetheless, it's something for me to remember because of the advice that he gave me and how he actually stopped. He had a security guard with him, said, no, I want to talk to the kid. And he talked to me. And for 5 minutes talking hockey and what I needed to do to be a successful hockey player. Very knowledgeable. Very, very knowledgeable. When he came here to Sioux, he got an ovation for when he was coaching Mississauga. Great to see Don Cherry at that point in my life, a memory that I'll always have. But that's not even the whole point of the story. Second point that I'll get into with that, 2 weeks later, it was in 2002, myself and my family, while we were waiting to go on a trip to Punta Cana, we stopped out of Toronto for a night, and we watched a Leafs-Habs game on Hockey Night in Canada. And I ended up getting on TV with a sign. It said, Cujo's best for Canada. But at that game, at the first intermission, my parents took me and my sister down to the tunnel area where the Leafs walked out. And obviously the O2 Leafs brings back just memories with Sundin and all the Gary Roberts. So my favorite Leaf of all time was Sundin and Gary Roberts, those two. Cujo, right? Those are three names I thought when I think first three guys that come to mind in the early thousands. But my dad talked to the security guy about trying to see if we can meet Ron MacLean, Don Cherry. And that Don Cherry actually met a guy named David McCaig in Sault Ste. Marie a few weeks ago. If you can say his name, maybe he'll remember him. The security guard actually, for me, went into the room. Ron MacLean was not available, but the security guard mentioned my name to Don Cherry. And Don Cherry said, I remember that kid. He's from Sault Ste. Marie. And we didn't tell him we were from the Sioux. We told the security guard we were, but the security guard said that he didn't even mention Sault Ste. Marie, but he remembered me 2 weeks after that. And for someone who's so busy, remembered my name and my father. So he allowed us into the Hockey Night in Canada studio, and we met and talked to Don Cherry. And it was for a longer period of time at that point. Before the period started, obviously he had to go, but he spent about 10 minutes with us after Coach's Corner. And just basic conversation. And funny thing that my mom did, my mom said, can I give you a hug and a kiss on the cheek? And my mom did that. She was a big Don Cherry fan. We had his name, talked about him all the time with his movies and for what he did. So Don Cherry, I'm giving you about 5-6 minutes here to talk about the memory that you gave me as a kid. And now maybe you don't remember who I am now because that was 2002. It's 23 years ago. Okay. But it's something that your personality was always so, I think, the hockey world should obviously be so grateful for because of the passion that you brought to the game. Despite the exit out of CBC, that's gone. Look, two sides to that story, sometimes three. There's a lot going on there, but nonetheless, Don Cherry had a big effect on my life. And to see him officially move on to the next chapters in his life, I wish you the best of luck. And I appreciate the memories that you allowed me as a child. Last point that I'll get into, Joe Bowen, friend of show. I did say that Don Cherry was my last point, but Joe Bowen is also retiring from commentary with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Joe Bowen has been on the show multiple times, and I'm sorry that I lied that Don Cherry was the last point. I got to bring up Joe Bowen. Joe Bowen, obviously, holy Mackinac, that voice has been echoing through my household since I was a kid as well. And I've had the joys of talking to Joe Bowen multiple times on this podcast. And I consider Joe Bowen a friend, given how many times we've been able to connect. I hope this is the year that you get to have your retirement and you can go off into the sunset of retirement and enjoy retirement as a commentator who saw the Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup. And I really hope you get to lift that cup on the ice when it happens next year. But we'll see if that can come up. But Joe Bowen, congratulations on your upcoming farewell tour, let's call it, as you go into retirement. Hopefully we get you on the podcast once more before that retirement occurs. All right, so I'm going to take a quick breather. And as we get ready, we will have Connor Henderson come on in as he waits in the wings and is going to be logging on. We're going to be talking Strike Zone here on the Game Sports Podcast. But whew, that's a lot of hockey content. We're an hour and 8 minutes in approximately here. We have a little bit less time when it comes to baseball to make sure that we meet our time limits. But nonetheless, I want to say thank you again to Jordan Trudeau and to all the hockey content here. There was a lot to get into. But as Connor Henderson comes in the wings, we're now going to be diving into overall updates with Strike Zone.
Without further ado, speaking of the legend himself, the one, the only, the rookie of the year, if you know, you know, say that every time. Connor Henderson, my friend Connor, join us for the Strike Zone portion of this episode segment of the show. Connor, my friend, how you doing?
Good, Dave. How are you? I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks. Obviously, we had plans for the bi-weekly uploads this year, but obviously some complications on my end in good ways obviously got in the way of that. I mean complications because we weren't able to see each other, which makes my life complicated. I feel like I'm singing an Avril Lavigne song there a little bit, but nonetheless, it's great to see you, my friend. You look fantastic. And I know, like if you're on video, if you're watching this on one end, Connor looking real good. Okay. Looking real good. I got the golf shirt on. I don't golf. Okay. I'm not the biggest golfer. When I do golf, I think I'm good, but I'm not. I feel underdressed for the occasion, but it's always a great time talking to you and talking baseball. Always fun.
Can't wait, Dave. We got some cool topics today. There's a huge move, especially if you're a Boston Red Sox fan. Rafael Devers getting sent to San Francisco.
Yeah.
A massive piece of their puzzle and a long-term part of what was supposed to be their future. For those who don't know, Rafael Devers was a third baseman, not a very good one defensively, but a great bat. And the Red Sox brought in Alex Bregman this summer, who is a great defensive third baseman and a great hitter, all-star. He displaced Devers. Devers was pissed. And when they asked Devers later in the year, can you go play first base for us? He refused and said, you told me I was a DH. I'm only going to DH now. I thought I was only a DH. Very shortly later, him and his giant contract get traded.
You know what, honestly, and this was kind of low down the trade. Obviously, it happened over a week ago or so, but Connor and I haven't had the chance to talk about it because I was too busy waiting for my son to arrive and then obviously being a dad for the first time. So I'm glad that we get to chat about this. But he was traded for Kyle Harrison, Jordan Hicks, former Blue Jay, and 2024 first-round pick James Tibbs III, and also pitching prospect Jose Bello. Very good pieces. Okay, look, Kyle Harrison, one of the top prospects in the Giants system going the other way. James Tibbs, look, this guy was a first-round pick. That I don't need to say anything further. I can go into his college accolades and what his stats are, but we'll see what he does in the MLB. It's a little bit different in the MLB than other sports. First round, fifth round, sixth round, 29th round, whatever round you go in, a lot different. But Jose Bello, there's a lot of promise, too, when the Red Sox had him in the organization, thinking that he'd be someone in that third pitching piece or the bottom of the rotation, be an effective piece of that rotation. So the Boston Red Sox move on from someone who obviously did not want to be there, despite what the bat power is and his significance to the team. They bring in pieces as a starting pitcher, easy for me to say, Jordan Hicks, and you bring in a couple prospects such as Tibbs, Harrison, and Jose Bello. And, Harrison and Bello are guys that might be able to jump on to get the opportunity. But again, team prospect Jose Bello, he's still waiting to get that opportunity up in the big. So Kyle Harrison's the one that I'm keeping my eye on the most, and James Tibbs. Obviously, we know what Jordan Hicks can do, and I wonder if the Sox are going to keep him or if they're going to look at flipping him later on in the year if they get out of the playoff picture. But Tibbs the third and Harrison will be the key pieces if they turn out to be prospects that work out for the Red Sox going forward.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest concerns for the fans is what the trade means. You don't like to be a seller. It usually means that your team's going in the wrong direction. And San Francisco fans see this as an addition to their lineup to make a push for them. So when they add Devers as a bat to the lineup, it's exciting. Yeah. Conversely, for the Red Sox, even if the value is equal or, arguably equal, you feel like you're selling. And that's not a good feeling as a fan. It means that your organization is trending in the wrong direction if your hopes were a playoff push, which coming into this season, I thought were completely reasonable.
Yeah. You thought that's what the Red Sox fans believed, right? They thought that would make sense for them to make that push. And a very open AL East this year that it seems to be, and right now it still is, as the date that we're recording. Nothing against Boston in any way, because that's obviously a legendary organization, the Green Monster, Fenway Park, all that. And as everyone knows, A's fan, and I had a sweet, soft spot for the Cubs. People think I have a soft spot for the Padres. I do, but not as a fan. I just would love to see them do better because I love how their team is constructed. But if I was a free agent, Connor, a little fun random fact for you, and I couldn't go to the Jays or Cubs, I'd be looking to go play in San Francisco. I love their ballpark. I love the heat. I'm jealous that Devers gets to go play there. I think he's going to be in a good situation. Obviously in an infield that has some talent already, that includes Matt Chapman, obviously there, another former Blue Jay. But I think Rafael Devers, the drama is what outweighed the significance to the team in this aspect. There was some background where Devers wasn't happy about being, replaced, let's say it, by Alex Bregman. Let's just say how it is. He was replaced from a defensive standpoint, which makes sense. Devers isn't the greatest third baseman. Connor, if I look at Devers the way he plays, he's a first baseman or a DH. That's where I see Rafael Devers playing. Despite that he's been okay at third, there's been worse third basemen. I think that the Giants are not investing in him just to be a defensive addition. It is for pure bat, and to get that Devers that signed that $31.8 I believe the contract was. I don't have it up in front of me, but something around that number. And when you're paying that big of number for a back, Connor, you're expecting some results.
Absolutely. And we discussed before we got on the show together today that this trade is very significant for Jays fans out there. He had a comparable contract to Vladdy Guerrero Jr. It's not that far off in terms of dollars per year. That's the significance of this piece getting moved out of Boston. The fans are shocked, and rightfully so.
They should be. They should be, because now you're like, what, and wonder what's going on. But look, Boston fans, Ramon Anthony's looking pretty solid. Okay, I'm just going to say that right now. I'm a big fan of Ramon Anthony. It's too bad that he's a Red Sox and not in the blue, or in Connor's ways in the white in Detroit. But a lot of good, the questionable moves you see in ball. And I said to Connor, one thing that kind of got my eye on this trade was almost the Mookie Betts trade back to the Dodgers. And it's not the same. Betts is a better player. I'm not saying they're comparable players, but at the time, Betts was the face. He was that star on the team. Devers was that. Right? And that's where they shipped off Betts to the Dodgers, another team in California. It seems like the Sox, if they don't want you anymore, they're sending you to the other side of the league, and they're sending you to California. So look, if you want to play in California, go to the Boston Red Sox, be an asshole while you're there. Sorry, Connor, one swear for me today. Be an asshole while you're there, and then they'll trade you to San Diego, LA, or they'll trade you to San Francisco, or you might even go to the LA Angels, okay? That should be your goal as a player if you're looking to play somewhere hot, okay? Connor, I want to go around the league a little bit. Obviously, we're into the season. We're hitting All-Star break is nearby. It's obviously just around the corner. That's where some trades start to happen. That's where some additions, and we're not going to talk trades on this segment. We'll wait for that. But obviously, as this year goes, your Tigers looking pretty up top the AL Central, looking pretty comfortable, actually. Pretty much at this point, about 10 games back are the Guardians. Then you have the American League East. If you're the Jays, you're in the middle of the pack, just a couple games behind the Yankees and a half game or so behind the Rays. The AL West, you got the Astros leading the way. Again, has a pretty big lead on Seattle there. The NL East, you go, the Mets and Phillies are battling, the Braves struggling. The Central, you got a pretty tight division. It's almost like the AL East. It's pretty wide open from 1 to 4. It's tight. And then the NL West, the Dodgers are pulling away a little bit more each week, but the Padres and the Giants are fighting their way. And don't count out the Diamondbacks, but you can count out the Rockies, because they are absolutely atrocious. So Connor, a couple teams, couple pieces of feedback, maybe a surprise or any reaction that you have about teams going up to this point in the season. We're about 80-so-ish games into the season.
Sure. I think the surprise for me is for the Dodgers, Shohei back on the mound for his opening inning.
Love it. Good point. Good topic.
I saw this one infographic where Shohei in his first inning, for those who don't know, gave up one run. He threw about 30 pitches. The command wasn't where he wanted it to be, but it's his first inning back in like a year or two. Like, it's been a while, right? And the headline just said washed. And it said 9 ERA, and it was technically true. So I had some fun with that one, but it's great to see him back on the mound, especially considering his compatriot Roki Sasaki had been shut down by the Dodgers. Japanese phenom young pitcher that was brought over this year was shut down. He had serious command struggles, losing velocity. So it's good news for the Dodgers to see their guy Shohei back on.
Look, honestly, Shohei Ohtani and being back on the mound is good for baseball. That's what people pay Ohtani to see. They want to see him pitch, then hit a home run the next inning, right? That's kind of and that's what I like about baseball, is having this two-way players and seeing that. When we were younger, Connor, the two-way player, you were one or the other. And if you're in the NL, the pitchers were hitting, right? So obviously that's all changed. You adopted the DH. Now you have the two-way players that people are trying to develop, just like Crawford in San Francisco. He's a prospect for the Giants. They're looking at trying to make him a two-way player, last I read anyway, so don't at me if I'm incorrect on that. There's players that are doing that a little bit more, and I'm hoping to see that as we could see the game grow, right? The velocity in the arms are bigger. The development in baseball's way out of this world, better than it's ever been, I would say, for a lot of other countries. I'm going to say for Canada, it depends if the Jays are doing good, I guess. But it's good to see. Having Shohei on the mound is a very good point. It's great to see. And that's what the Dodgers brought him in, and paying him for what they're paying him, even though the contract is quite unique, because he's going to be getting paid till he's like 75 years old. I know that's not true. I'm just saying it. But those are good points, for the Dodgers, is Ohtani. Do you have another one you want to bring up about a team that's maybe been a surprise?
Well, just dovetailing off of what you were saying there, Hunter Green is a starting pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds. He's having a very, very talented pitcher. throws over 100 miles an hour as a starter, which you very rarely see. He's an example of a guy who, out of high school, he was drafted second overall, but he was a top shortstop prospect too. And it makes me wonder if Shohei Ohtani was in the league first, is that a guy where you say, look, like, let's see if he can play both ways, because he definitely could have. The ship has probably sailed on that, almost certainly. And when you have a 100-mile-an-hour fastball coming out of high school, it's almost a guarantee that you're going to get a crack at the MLB. But there's an example of a guy who could have easily, if the roles were reversed, been a two-way guy. There's been tons throughout history who never got their shot. I'm glad Shohei has broken down that barrier. And we're seeing it in the NFL now with guys like Travis Hunter, who's a cornerback and a wide receiver going second overall. Yeah. That sort of flexibility. If you're a great athlete and you can do it all, let's see you do it all.
I think the sports is just so much more unique now. It's great. How about your Tigers, Connor? Quickly, I know we're hitting the end of time.
Yeah.
They're picking up where they left off, my friend. It's looking really good there. And the Tigers have some cash, okay? They got some rookie deals they got to pay up, I know, but I think they can really build up on this and make it a special year for the Tigers fans. I'm saying they could be the team to walk out of the AL if they keep this up at this point.
Look, they're legit. Last year they were all vibes. This year they're legit. Are they going to have enough money to pay Tarek Skubal the $400 million that he's seeking and deserves? But I don't know if their pockets are that deep, and it's really sad. Jackson Jobe, also their rookie phenom pitcher, not even halfway through the season, he's getting Tommy John. So there's another one bites the dust, and it makes you seriously wonder, as good as the pitch clocks are, is it going to increase those sorts of injuries? I also, question whether a 5-man rotation should be expanded to make it either 6 or 7-man rotation, because these injuries it's almost guaranteed now that if you throw over 95 miles an hour, you're going to get Tommy John. Either more rest or more rest in between pitches are one of the solutions. You won't get the latter, so I'm kind of hoping for the former, which means less starts from your star guys, but hopefully less Tommy John surgeries, especially in a world now where everybody's looking for max velocity, max spin rate. Nobody cares if you can go through the lineup twice. You're only going to have to go through once, max it out. Too many injuries, really sad to see. And another top prospect bites the dust in Jackson Jobe.
You never know who could come back from that, how they're going to come back and how they're going to bounce back. It's hard. I'm a big fan of the bullpen day. I'm a fan of an extended rotation. I fully agree with that. Good points for sure. On my end, the surprise for me this year, I'm kind of surprised about the Pirates. I had a little bit more hope for them this year to be a bit more successful. And now you're hearing rumors about Paul Skeens getting traded. Look, if the Pirates trade Paul Skeens, if that happens, that is the biggest mistake that organization can make. I'm telling you, it depends who you get back. Like, if you get back Travis Bazzana from the Guardians, I'm not saying he's going to the Guardians. Trust me, I don't think Livy Dunn wants to go to the Guardians either. But, I honestly have given an example. Unless you're getting like a prospect that is like a Ramon Anthony level, I would say, maybe that's a good comparison. I don't think you even think about making that trade. And there's one team, though, that could make that trade because they have the prospects. And Connor knows what team I'm talking about, because it's the Tigers that have a couple people in their system that they can do that. And I'd be surprised, why not make it interesting? Trade Skubal while you can, get value for him. Don't trade him to the Pirates. Maybe there's a third team in there that you can throw to make it a three-way trade where Skeens heads on over to Motown and some prospects go to another way, and Skubal goes to that contending team potentially in the AL or NL, wherever he ends up. Just throwing that out there, Connor, just throwing that out there. The American League East is my surprise here, and there's one team that is. The Baltimore Orioles, yes, that goes without saying. I don't know what happened this year. They're starting to, pick it up, but they're not getting anywhere this year, that team. The Rays, Connor, the Rays are so annoying. They're so annoying. That team is, what is this? Why every year they got McClanahan, they got all these pitchers all the time that are just absolute studs. They got batters that hit 300, that their name is like David Bass or something, some random name that's not even, I said David Bass. That is a name in baseball, I think. But anyways, they got a name out there that it's not even a great household name, and that's their whole lineup, and they're successful, Connor. I think they're the definition of how baseball should be played. Not spending money, but still showing success. So that's my two surprises this year, and they're both one from a winning perspective and one from a losing perspective.
Oh, for sure. The Rays always seem to be on the cutting edge of any sort of new wave baseball sort of mindset, and they never fail to amaze. I think being a small market, they're allowed to take risks, And I think they were one of the first champions of like the opener as a concept and things like that. Like they always seem to be ahead of the curve. And I wonder, since they're smaller, if they have less pressure, they're able to sort of roll the dice on those sorts of things and experiment and then find innovation where others have not.
% Connor. It's so annoying, especially from a Jays fan. So, Connor, my friend, anything else before we wrap up the show? We're at a couple minutes over there, so I want to start wrapping us up because I know you are taking time out of your day and you've had quite the busy day, so I don't want to use up more of your time, my friend.
It's all good. I have one really important thing that I have to say, and that's congratulations to you once again on being a dad. So,
thank you, man.
Congrats to you and to Hannah.
Thank you. And from my wife, thank you as well. And I was going to have him on the opener as a surprise. I didn't do it yet. Not yet. It's going to happen one day that, when we get the crew together, I'll have him on the show and introduce him to what he's going to be hosting in the next 20 years when I retire.
I mean, the Pandas have a new prospect in the farm system now is all I'm going to say.
Yeah, they do. They do. Now he can actually play baseball from a kid, unlike where I didn't play until I was... When did we start? 2018, right? So
Dave, potential there. The potential, it's 5 stars.
It's 5-star potential. It shouldn't be me teaching them. I might have to hire someone, maybe from Ottawa to move home and teach them.
I would love it. I feel honored. My dad still coaches there. Trude still coaches there. You got a bunch of great coaches there for you. So.
That's true. So, Connor, my friend, another edition of Strike Zone of the Game Sports Podcast. I don't know what number of Strike Zone is. We've been doing it for a long time, my friend. But thank you very much as always. And we'll try to. It won't be next week that we connect, but hopefully the week after we can get back to the routine of bi-weekly episodes until we hit our summer vacation, which might be a couple weeks longer this summer because of obvious reasons. But again, thank you, my friend.
Sounds good, Dave. Take care.
Awesome. That's Connor Henderson, fine-dressed man, Connor Henderson. If you're on video, you get to see how great he looks. So make sure you check out video. And where can you check out video? Very simple. 91 Network. And if you're also on the internet, you can check out Spaces. Village Media and Sue Today is where the Game Sports Podcast is located, and on any podcast platform. Okay, anywhere you want to look, we are there. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook at the Game Sports Podcast. I gotta make sure I say that slow so you guys can not get confused and put the Game Sport Podcast, because I get that common mistake sometimes. Game Sports Podcast. We will be back next week, and you know what's next week, everybody? Post NHL Draft, NHL Free Agency. And there's going to be some moves, I tell you, from there. And who knows, maybe there'll be some more news from a Sioux perspective, but also on the diamond. So make sure you keep an eye on that next episode coming up here on the game. And until then, I want to say thank you again to Connor. I want to say thank you again to Jordan Trudeau. And I want to say thank you again to you, the listeners. And thank you to my wife for being such a rock star and giving me the gift of being a dad. I got to make sure that I say that. Little Arlo McCaig has entered the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Until next week, I'm here to remind you to keep your stick on the ice, swing your bats, catch your touchdowns, drain your threes, and shoot your shots. Booyah.